To begin
the webinar presented to you by Perry Johnson Laboratory Accreditation. My name is Mike Kramer. I am the Calibration Program Manager at PJLA. As you can see by the screen, today's topic is 17025 Section 4.15 Management Review Requirements. Again, thank you all for logging in. As in the past, those of you who've attended our webinars, and for your first timers, this is informational. This webinar is being recorded and will be available in its entirety on the Perry Johnson Laboratory Accreditation website, which you can go to directly at www.pjlabs.com. There is a link. I'll leave this under training, which is specified for recorded webinars. Have a wealth of information under there. I was looking at the other day. I believe they go back to 2012. So we've been doing this for quite a while, and we have quite an assortment of recorded webinars that's available to you all on our website, and this will also include today's. So if a colleague or if you want to go back and review it at a later date, feel free to visit our webinar. And in the past, the duration of this is set at for 1 hour. I don't anticipate this one going that long. We'll see. And as always, at the end, there'll be time allocated for questions. So toward the end, there'll be a slide. You should have a place specified on your screen to ask questions. I am being assisted by our operation/president, Tracy Sorensen, at our headquarters in Troy, Michigan, who will field the questions and funnel them to me at the end. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and begin today's topic, management reviews. I want to start out by looking at comparison here. 17025, you have Section 414, which is internal audits, and you have Section 415, which is management reviews. Some of the similarities between the two, like internal audits, management reviews are to be regularly scheduled, shall be formal activities conducted in accordance with a documented procedure. As a rule, a management review is a special meeting of the laboratory's top management called to discuss the effectiveness of the laboratory's management system and or calibration requirements and any changes that may be needed. So basically, internal audits look mainly for compliance within the management system. Management reviews will determine if the management system's policies and procedures are suitable and effective in generating quality data, meet the objectives of the laboratory, and require improvements to meet changing needs. I got two buzzwords highlighted there. When I think of internal audit, the words that come to mind is compliance. You have a quality management system. If you're an existing lab, you may already be accredited that has been deemed compliant with 17025. You are going back and you're doing an internal audit, just assuring you are maintaining compliance to that standard and also with your own documented quality management system. When I think of management review, the buzzword that comes out is improvement. It's a vehicle used to basically go back, look, see what's been generated since the last management review and look for opportunities for improvement. And as stated there in the last bulleted item, improvement to meet changing needs. A couple requirements within the standard before you even get to, Section 415. Management review comes out in Section 4.2, which is the management system of the laboratory. So the back in 4.2.2, when you're looking at the objectives and establishing a quality policy statement, the laboratory management system policies related to quality, including a quality policy statement, shall be defined in the quality manual, however named. The overall objectives shall be established and shall be reviewed during the management reviews. Again, it's brought out, you implemented the quality management system, established objectives, wrote a quality policy statement. It should be a one-time event. It's something that's go back. It should be reviewed at least during the management review during those events. 410, and this is a section on improvement, and there's only one item within this section. The laboratory shall, and that word shall I highlighted there, and those of you that's been in our past webinars, especially on internal auditing, that is a must. That is a requirement. Shall continually improve the effectiveness of its management system through the use of quality policy, quality objectives, audits result, analyzing of data, corrective and preventive action, and management reviews. So when I look at this requirement, of course, this is something that it's in 510, but you really can't make a judgment until you actually assess these portions of the quality management system of the laboratory and see if these line items are actually being used as a vehicle for improvement. I realize that the standard says you shall do internal audits, you shall have a policy and procedure for corrective and preventive action, and for conducting a management review. Hopefully, laboratories, if you're accredited with 17025, that's just a start. You're just not going through the motions and addressing these requirements because they're specified in 17025 that you shall have those. That they're actually being utilized as a tool as a vehicle for continually to improve the effectiveness of the management system. So a management review in general, as a rule, a management review is a meeting of the laboratory's top management called to discuss the effectiveness of the laboratory's management system and testing and /or calibration activities and any changes that may be needed. Usually, management reviews are timed to follow closely after each internal audit so that the results of the audit may be discussed during the management review. We're going to dissect the management review somewhat here. I'm going to refer to a document, APLAC TC003. TC is from the technical committee there. And we're going to look at some of the objectives of a management review that is specified in that document. So TC003 is APLAC's management review for laboratories. It also incorporates inspection bodies. So if I have any folks here that are looking at our program on 17020, this is specific to that program as well. APLAC. So who is APLAC? PJLA is a fully recognized accredited body by the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation, better known as IEC, and the Asian Pacific Laboratory Cooperation, APLAC. To provide testing and calibration accrediting services. APLAC is an ILAC recognized region, hence this is a region that we fall under PJLA. So looking at some of the objectives that this document brings out. Objective 1, the senior management of the laboratory shall periodically conduct a review of the laboratory's management system and testing and/or calibration activities to ensure their suitability and effectiveness and to introduce any necessary changes or improvements. Also, management reviews should be planned to establish what changes, if any, are necessary to ensure that the quality arrangements for the laboratory continue to meet the laboratory's needs. The review should also ensure that the quality system of the laboratory continues to conform to the requirements of ISO 17025. Continuing with objectives. The management review should also take note of changes that have taken place or need to take place in the organization's facilities, equipment, procedures, and or activities of the laboratory. And also, the need for changes to the system may also arise as a result of findings from internal audits, external quality audits, interlaboratory comparisons or proficiency tests, surveillance visits or assessments by accrediting bodies, or complaints from customers. These specific items are actually required points to be addressed within the management review, as we'll see later on in this presentation. It's a reflection on what's been done since the last management review, and also if there's any needed changes to the system that arise from the findings from these specific elements. And then lastly, we sort of hit on this earlier in specifying the requirements stated in 422. Quality policies and goals should be reviewed and revised if necessary. Quality objectives and action plans for the coming year should be set. The stated quality policy statement objectives was put into the quality manual, and the management review is a vehicle for reviewing that and see if it is still current and it is still if there's any needed change that needs to be made to those policies or objectives that is stated within the quality management system. Okay, I'm going to look at some of the organizational guidelines in establishing a management review, or excuse me, in conducting a management review. The senior management of the laboratory should be responsible for conducting reviews of the management system. Those members of senior management have an overall responsibility for the design and implementation of the organization's management system, for the technical operations of the organization, and should be making decisions resulting from the findings of internal audits, and external assessments should be involved in the management reviews. We're going to look at that a little bit more here in a few more slides as to who should be involved in the actual management reviews. Also, looking at guidelines here, and these are specified in TC 003. The quality manager should be responsible for ensuring that all reviews are conducted in a symptomatic manner according to an established procedure, and that the management reviews are recorded. We're going to look at these a little bit more in depth when we look at the requirements that are specified within 17025. And then lastly, the quality manager and operational managers should be responsible for ensuring that actions identified during the management reviews are implemented within the agreed time frame. Okay, going to look at planning. We have some objectives. We're going to look at elements in regards to planning of the management reviews. So the standard states a predetermined schedule. Management reviews should be carried out at least once a year. The meetings should be attended by top management. Touched on this a little bit before. So this is including the person under whose authority the quality manual has been issued. It is essential that the head of the laboratory, technical management, and the quality manager. So in other words, you specify in 422, it's specified you have to have a quality and technical manager. It's essential that those individuals are involved in this. The section heads are present. Also, executive or top management is considered to be those individuals who have the authority and can provide the resources necessary to make changes to any aspect within the laboratory. although it is up to the individual laboratory to identify who these individuals are. So in other words, those individuals that has the authority, if there's resources that may be needed for the laboratory, those individuals that have the authority and can provide those resources should be involved in the management reviews. 17025, it's one standard. It's written for, it could be a Fortune 500 company. It could be a small organization, a family-run lab organization. Could even be a one-person operation. It is, however, one standard. It is recognized that in small laboratories, one person may be fulfilling more than one of the above functions. Good management reviews can occur even in a single-person laboratory. We'll look at the requirement. This comes right out of 17025, Section 415.1. Management review is a rather short section within the standard. 415.1 states there is a lot of information there, though. In accordance with a predetermined schedule and procedure, hence you need a predetermined schedule that needs to be specified, and you need to have a procedure. The laboratory's top management shall periodically conduct a review of the laboratory management system and testing and or calibration activities to ensure their continuing suitability and effectiveness, and to introduce any necessary changes or improvements. And that word improvement pops up. Within 17025, there is a note. It specifies in the standard a predetermined schedule. A typical period for conducting a management review is once every 12 months. So typically that's when I will see a management review. I don't believe I've ever seen one conducted further out. If it is, I would resort back to that section on improvement. Management review is a vehicle that should be used for identifying improvements that we mentioned when we went over 410. If it's, say, a predetermined schedule right now is not defined, I would say once every 3 years would be unacceptable as far as it being used as a vehicle to introduce improvements. So the larger the organization, the more folks that are involved, I would say the more frequently the management review should be held. The predetermined schedule may specify dates and or times. Again, that's my opinion on the matter there as far as a predetermined schedule. But what's specified is that the predetermined schedule may be specified and will be performed. For example, it could be stated in June of every year, or may indicate an interval of performance, e.g., management reviews will be performed on an annual basis. So have within your quality management system, the predetermined schedule needs to be defined. We'll look at the actual implementation of the management review, and these elements, I'm referencing TC003 once again. The management review should be conducted in a systematic manner using a formal agenda. Results of the management review should feed into the organization's planning system and should include, if needed, a revision of the quality policy and medium and long-term goals, a planned program for preventive action, including the setting of objectives for the coming year. Formal action plans, including timelines for the implementation and agreed changes of the management system and or to the operations of the organization's objectives. Still looking at implementations, however, we're looking at specifically what's required as specified in 17025. 415.1 includes what the management review shall take into account. Again, This is directly from the standard, and we have that word shall. So when you're looking at the management reviews, these are items that need to be addressed. The suitability of policies and procedure. I referenced there 4322, which is a sectional document review, where it is specified in that section of the standard that the laboratory shall periodically review its documents for suitability. So this is including the need for amendments of the system, and this also includes the quality manual. Let's take, for example, if you have a internal procedure involving the logging in and tracking of items in the laboratory, and during the year you acquired new software to accomplish this. This may be reflective of a need to change that internal procedure. It's just an example of some things that can happen during the year that may make current policies and procedures unsuitable. Reports from managerial and supervisory personnel. One of the key items on here would be the previous management reviews. Typically a management review, a good agenda item to start with is a review of the previous management review and the action items that were highlighted, whether or not they've been fulfilled. This could also be memos, directives, things that come down from upper management, which has a direct impact on laboratory operations. Next item that shall be taken into account is the outcome of recent internal audits. So these are since the last management review and any follow-up actions. So if you recall on an earlier slide, it's beneficial to conduct the management review shortly after the last internal audits. So basically that would be an item which would be looked at. Has the internal audit been completed? Has it uncovered any non-conformances? Are they need to run anything through corrective action? And have there been any open issues have been closed? So these are some examples of things that would be discussed and brought forth during the management review. Of course, whenever any opportunities for improvement that arise through any of these line items should be taken advantage of and brought forth in the management review. The review shall take into account corrective and preventive action. I'm sure you have a system in place, the standards say you have to have a policy and procedure for corrective and preventive action. Management review, you actually go back, you analyze the corrective and preventive action. Have they been closed? Have they been monitored for effectiveness? And is there anything that can be taken away from what's been reviewed since the last management review concerning corrective and preventive action? Assessments by external bodies. Reports on surveillance visits and assessment carried out by the accrediting body and follow-up actions by the organization. And this comes to mind first with this item. So if you're an accredited laboratory by PJLA, these will be the assessments when we come onto your facility and do your annual biannual reaccreditation assessments, or we do your off-site or on-site surveillance, whatever the situation may occur. And the reports based on those assessments. Was there any non-conformances? Have they been closed? Have they been corrective action? And then again, lastly, is there any opportunities for improvements? External bodies can also include reports on audits by customers. You could have customers coming in and auditing your facilities, or other approval bodies and follow-up actions. It could be regulatory. You could have regulatory agencies coming in. So any other internal assessment or auditing that's being done other than the internal audit within your laboratory. The results of interlaboratory comparisons or proficiency tests. At PJLA, we have a policy and policy guide that's in effect for laboratories to comply with PL1 for proficiency testing. So within this policy guide, now proficiency tests are required to be done every year. We have a 4-year plan. This laboratory is expected to have approved and to follow. So this is basically reflecting back on the PTs or proficiency tests since the last assessment. Have they been conducted? Are they on schedule? And what was the results of those proficiency testing? Also under this section can be included any trends or analysis of results of in-house quality control checks. These are other things that fall into place for assuring the quality of test or calibration results. Could be control charts, comparison to known reference standards. These would be other things you would have in place. Another item that needs to be taken into account is changes in the volume and type of work. So in other words, this could have a direct impact on the resources that the laboratory has and the allocation of those resources. The adequacy of current human and equipment resources. Do they need to be altered? Do resources need to be added to any certain areas depending on the volume of testing? And any future plans and estimate for new work, additional staff, new equipment, change methods, etc. Another item that needs to be taken into account is customer feedback. So there is a requirement that the laboratory within 17025 is required to seek feedback, both positive and negative, from its customers. So reflecting on this, any trends or analysis of complaints and other feedback received from the customers should be reviewed. One thing I'd like to bring out is the means of receiving feedback effective? In other words, if, say, you're doing customer surveys, and I do come across this in doing assessment, we send out surveys, but we don't get anything back. If that's the case, that's not an effective means of seeking feedback. Alternative methods should be sought, such as perhaps follow-up calls once your customers have utilized your service may be, in fact, fulfilling the role and actually being utilized as a vehicle for improvement for your laboratory in going back and receiving customer feedback. Okay, still on what the management review shall take into account complaints. Since the last management review, analyzing complaints, are there any reoccurring and any follow-up action that was needed in taking up, dealing with complaints? Other things are recommendations for improvement and any other relevant factors such as quality control activities, resources, and staff training. Um, 415.2 is a section within 17025, and that's the requirements. Findings from management review and the actions that arise from them shall be recorded. The management review shall ensure that these actions are carried out within an appropriate agreed time scale. So in other words, you have a management review, there needs to be a record, any action items need to be agreed to, and some sort of a time frame needs to be established. In other words, for example, if cross-training was an issue and it was brought out in the management review that a specific technician needed to begin training in other areas of testing and or calibration, that should be brought out along with a specific time frame for completion of this training. Okay, we've established requirements within the management review. We looked at the planning and objective of the management review. Now we're going to look at the records. So all management reviews shall be documented. The documentation may be in the form of minutes of reviews, meetings, together with clear indication as to actions to be taken by whom and what time limit. Again, TC 003 specifies it should be the quality manager's responsibility to ensure that all action arising from reviews are recorded and discharged as required. The records should be readily accessible and be retained for a minimum period, which would be specified in the laboratory's record retention guidelines as required in ISO 17025, section 413.1.2. That is the section on records. And 413, when it specifies quality records, it specifically points out management reviews as one of those records that needs to fall within the realm of section 413. So once you have a management review, you create a minutes, a report, or wherever you're going to report it, that hence falls under the realm of 413 and your quality management system in regards to records. Post-meeting activities. Action items will be assigned to specific personnel and target dates are set for completion. After the meeting, all participants receive copies of the minutes and memorandums on conclusions reached and actions planned or initiated. Quality manager follows up on action items to ensure completion. Action and their effectiveness should be monitored at regular management meetings. So if you have some regularly scheduled meetings on a monthly, weekly basis, management review, once you have the review, you have action items, they should be followed up throughout the year at regular management meetings. Okay, that reaches the end of the presentation. There's instructions here for answering any questions. I'll give approximately 5 minutes right now once I stop talking, and you should have a space provided to you for submitting questions. At the end, I will sign back on, and I will attempt to answer as many as possible. If for whatever reason a question remains unanswered, or perhaps after we sign off today, something comes to mind, you can still submit your question to that address there, webinar@pjlabs.com. So without further ado, I will go ahead and give you all approximately 5 minutes to, if you have any questions, to submit those questions to Tracy at our headquarters in Michigan, and she will go ahead and direct them to my attention. Okay, hello and welcome back. Before we go any further, I'd like to just go ahead and mention next month we already have our scheduled webinar scheduled. As you can see, it's July 18th, and the topic would be a review of traceability requirements as specified in PL2. PJLA's measurement and traceability requirements. Again, save that date. Hope to see you all live back in July. I have got a series of questions here. So without further ado, let me start. Question: should promotions be discussed within the management review? The management review specifies items that it shall take into account. That is the minimal requirements. You can add to that. I would say specifically promotions, if it's going to have a direct impact on laboratory or testing operations, i.e. the volume of work, what's being targeted, then by all means, I think that it should be definitely a line item that's brought out within the management review of the laboratory. Okay, I'm trying to make sure, hopefully I'm hitting them all here. Can the management review be conducted in multiple sessions as long as the schedule of review events is clearly documented? Complaints and customer feedback are reviewed in February, corrective and preventive action in March. That is perfectly acceptable. I really see this more in internal audits, where you go back and review the various sections of, not review, you do your internal audit on various sections of the standard throughout. The same thing can be performed with management review, just as long as that predetermined schedule is established and followed. Question: so if a one-person lab, in a one-person lab, can the management review be done, for example, every 18 months? I know it would be difficult to follow up external assessments, for example, but as I understood, it is permitted anyway. Is this correct? Currently, as far as fulfilling the requirements for 17025, if you're a one-person organization and you specify 18 months, that is perfectly fine, just as long as it's effective. The way I look at this, if you are a one-person organization, you are involved in every aspect of that laboratory operations, and should be able to keep on top of any issues that's affecting the laboratory, and should be on top of any opportunities for improvement. Where I might see an issue would be if I was an assessor and I come in there and I see obvious things that were addressed during the year that wasn't followed up. For example, let's say there was some corrective actions that came up, and there was no indication that they were monitored or followed up for effectiveness. I would say just as long as you could keep and this is more pertinent, like I said, for a one-person operation that has their finger on the pulse, I can see perhaps extending that beyond a year. And as far as fulfilling the requirement, currently it states a predetermined schedule. If it still can be effectively used to improve the quality management system, then I would say that that would be acceptable for a small organization. Bear with me, I'm pulling these up off my cell phone. have another question here concerning multiple sessions. As we discussed, that would be fine. Question, see if I understand this correctly, is about the proficiency test. The laboratory management manager should keep a record of interlaboratory comparisons. How often we need to review these results? Do we need these comparisons to all our magnitudes? First, if you're a PJLA lab, and I know a lot of the other accrediting bodies, they have policies and procedures that, guidelines that you need to adhere to in conducting and planning proficiency testing. So as far as proficiency testing, that should be at the forefront. As far as what's required in the management reviews, it takes a look at any proficiency testing that was done since the last management reviews. It would also look at, for example, a PJLA accredited lab. If perhaps your 4-year plan, what's planned for the coming year, and then also what should be taken into account would be any changes to your scope. Do we need to keep a record of interlaboratory comparisons, and how often do we need to review these results? Well, other areas within PL1 and within 17025, of course, you need to keep the results. You need to review the results once they've been analyzed. If you're doing an interlaboratory comparison, you need to have a procedure for doing the interlab. The data needs to be analyzed in a reasonable, it should be analyzed and as a means to determine whether or not the results are actually comparing to each other in a meaningful way. So, of course, if there's any results that are unfavorable, you need to review those results once they become known, and any undesirable results, any PT failures, appropriate corrective action would need to be taken. These are all things, we're talking about management reviews here, these are all things that would come up in the management reviews and would be looked at. And in fact, if there was any unfavorable results, that they, of course, during the management review, they'll be looked at and assured that effective corrective action is in the process of being implemented or have been implemented in addressing those results. Do we need these result comparisons for magnitudes? For magnitudes, I assume you're referring to disciplines as specified in PL1. And yes, you have a 4-year plan, everything that's specified. And again, that's minimal PTs. You can have an active proficiency test, proficiency testing program. Like I said earlier, as far as looking for management reviews is looking for opportunities for improvement. Proficiency testing should be an avenue to laboratory would use in order to look for areas of improvement. Data should be analyzed in a meaningful way, and any corrective action that comes about as a result of a proficiency testing should be addressed during the management review. Excuse me, I hope I answered your question there. If not, feel free to clarify on that that web page right there, webinar@pjlabs.com. Okay, bear with me. I'm going through these on my cell phone, making sure I'm getting them all. Are there guidance documents that clearly outline the level of detail for each management review component? And if so, what are they? There's probably various ones out there. You need to have a procedure for your management review. So what you need to comply with is what's stated in your procedure. The ones that come to mind for me, foremost, is the APLAC document that I specified. There's also one I know, actually, an example of a management review and line items that need to be addressed, available at the NIST Office of Weights and Measures metrology website. They're the two that come to mind when I'm thinking of any sort of guidance document. Again, that's the TC 003 and the NIST Office of Weights and Measures document. There are, of course, I'm sure there's others out there. And also what you need to be concerned with, whatever external documents you're using that you incorporated into your own procedure, your procedure complies with the requirements of 17025, and then also that you, of course, is doing what you stated, and your actually management review is reflective of your procedure. Question 4.15 section norm is all about management systems. Not really sure what the question is there. 4.15 is specific to the element of management reviews, and the elements within the management review, within the quality management system that needs to be taken into account when conducting the management review. Question is, the 4.15 section norm is all about management systems with a question mark there. Now it's about those elements. It's about what's been done addressing those elements since the last management reviews, and of course any opportunities for improvement. For the quality management system, that's more reflective of 4.22 when it talks about the structure of the quality management system within the lab. Have a little bit of a looks like a language barrier here. I'm trying to phrase some of these questions. The laboratory policy has not, I guess it's been modified since 2 years ago. It is convenient. We have passed 2 audits, and there was about calibration procedures. So I'm not sure exactly what's being paraphrased here. I'll attempt to answer the question. You're required to, in section, if you have a procedure, internal, external, that's related to your quality management system or your technical procedures, you need to review them and make sure that they're still suitable. So if you go on 2 years, just as long as you reviewed them and they are determined that they are suitable, there is no need to be changes. I would say you fulfill that requirement. If there's obvious, let's say you're using a procedure that's been superseded that you're still using, then in that case I would state that that the system, that particular procedure is outdated and would need to be updated. Okay, just bear with me. I'm just going to verify. I got various emails here. I'm looking at my cell phone. I'm just assuring that I got everything here. There is actually one here written in another language that I don't understand. I, of course, not going to be able to answer those or attempt to answer them. I believe I've gotten everything, and like I said, if I happen to miss a question, please feel free to, again, I'll go back to that tab there. Go to that webinar at pjlabs.com. Tracy, and again, Tracy, thank you for helping me through this process. We'll have those questions fielded to her. She will send them directly to me with your email address. So again, if for whatever reason I did not answer a question, or I missed a target on some of those, I wasn't real sure exactly what was being asked, feel free to use that website, that web address there. And again, if something pops up this evening as you're relaxing at home in regards to management reviews, it's not too late to ask. So again, keep that website that web address handy just in case. Again, I want to thank everybody for logging in. I appreciate it. I wanted to go back to the date for the next webinar, which I inadvertently got off that screen. There we go. Again, if you didn't catch it earlier, our next webinar is set for July 18th. We actually have them set coming up for the next 3 months. Hopefully you're on our emailing list that you would get notifications when these webinars are being conducted. If you're not and you feel you should, please call our office and get on our emailing list. Again, also check our website. It's a wealth of information there. We have, like I said, all our this webinar and all the other ones that we've done. I'm stating going back to 2012 are actually available for review. We also offer live off-site training that occasionally we'll schedule. So our website is www.pjlabs.com. Again, thank you. I appreciate you logging in and look forward to getting together again next month.